Why Yandere Simulator? Why is that the comparison you made?
I was like clenching my ass cheeks, hoping that you didn't say this.
You enjoyed Romeo and Juliet more than Hamlet?
Sarah J. Maas button.
My brain is like racing now.
Oh no, Alex!
Good job, me. I really don't know how to speak.
Oh God! Can't do this. This is my guilty boner. Family listens to these. Never mind.
Don't you me?
Totally believe you.
That's still bigger than a city.
It's more than one planet.
Hi friends. Welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. I'm Dean, joined today by Alex and Gabe. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Cool. Today we're going to be talking about the Marie-Soleil trope. And that is a pretty, I guess,
Hello.
Oh my God. All
I
right.
have some concerns.
Yeah. All right. So the Marie-Soleil trope is it's kind of hard to really pinpoint what the Marie-Soleil trope is for those who aren't familiar with it, or for those who don't know when that trope is happening. But basically, the Marie-Soleil trope is the perfect protagonist, basically. And I know I may be kind of butchering it with just that first sentence, but basically the Marie-Soleil trope pretty much is like the perfect character. They to discuss some of the qualities that you can see in a Marie-Soleil. Typically they would be a woman, a very beautiful woman at that. They're almost always the hero. They have very zero flaws. They're beloved by pretty much everyone. And I think the biggest sticking point is that it seems like the entire universe of or around the Marie-Soleil gravitates solely around that character. This is, I guess, it's kind of reminiscent of the Chosen One trope because, the Chosen One almost always is like destined to save the world and whatnot. But with the Marie-Soleil, there's a lot behind that name that we'll eventually get into. But yeah, to open up the discussion, actually, what do you guys kind of think on the Marie-Soleil trope?
I think right off the bat with your description, I would replace the perfect character with a flawless character, because I think that's a better descriptor. Just
yeah,
because
that is better, yeah.
when you say a character is perfect, generally that means you like them, in my opinion. And in my experience, Marie-Soleil characters are not well liked because they're really boring characters. Usually, they don't do anything except have everyone tell them how perfect they are all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, flawless is definitely the best way to put it. Because you're right. Like, we have our own definition of perfect characters, but I think when a character is too perfect, then or too perfect would be another good way to put it instead of just perfect. Mm-hmm. Gabe, how about you? What are your initial thoughts on the Marie-Soleil?
I would say yeah. You more or less got it. I'd say Marie-Soleil is a character who the universe of the fiction sort of warps around, and they suck the life out of potential other arcs for other characters by virtue of doing everything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest point that, like I touched on earlier, on how the universe basically gravitates around this character. And I think in comparison to a Chosen One, at least with the Chosen One early, and keep in mind that I could be wrong about this, but with the Chosen One trope, it's almost always that they may be the one destined to save the world and whatnot, but a lot of Chosen One stories, the world still kind of lives and breathes around them to some degree. And to a Mary Sue, like everything is solely focused on that character, like the characters that they meet, the worlds that they interact in, you know, the weapons they use, the conversations they have with people. It's all solely focused back on the Mary Sue. Meanwhile, with the Chosen One, you can have, you know, it's more or less the same thing. Like you can have side characters or something talking with like with the Chosen One, but at least it doesn't feel forced, in my opinion. And it's kind of hard to compare the two, but yeah.
I don't know if I would say a chosen one like runs the risk of being a Mary Sue. I think because I think there's a lot of I think there's a I think mm, I don't know. I feel like there's more to it. 'Cause I feel like a chosen one stereotype is like you could argue the universe
Does
like
revolve around them?
revolves around them by nature of there being like a cosmic chosen one. But I don't know if they don't automatically like I think a characteristic of Mary Sue is more in like the supporting characters than the character themselves, because usually what you see is they'll be surrounded by a cast of supporting characters, but the supporting characters don't really have anything to do because the protagonist is like, oh, we need an archer and a lockpicker and a strong man and and all these things. And then so in a organic story, you might have a group of characters who all possess individual skills that complement each other, and you can have sort of dynamic going on. But in a story with a Mary Sue protagonist, you would just have the Mary Sue do everything while everyone around them goes, "Wow, you're the greatest, sexiest, coolest, awesomest dude I've ever fucking seen. You're so sick." And then that's it. That's all she wrote. That's all the character dynamic.
Yeah. It's also Mary Sue characters are pretty sure like the term originated in like self-insert fan fiction too, if I remember correctly. And so Mary Sue characters are often literally self-inserts of like the storyteller. And it's like the storyteller trying to be like, oh, I want to be really cool and powerful and I want everyone to love me, so I'm going to be this really cool character, which leads to a character that the audience is supposed to be able to project onto, and leaves the character with no personality traits.
Yeah. Which I guess, like, if it's supposed to be a self-insert thing, I guess that's fine if you're keeping that story to yourself.
Well, if it's in fan fiction, I think it's fine in general.
Yeah.
If you're into that sort of thing when it comes to fan fiction, I'm personally not, but I mean, some people like what they like.
Yeah. I mean, like people write fan fiction for fun if they want to. I feel like if someone's writing a fanfic and they want to write like a story where they basically a version of themselves with their name misspelled hops into I don't know, Dragon Ball, and they get to hang out with Goku, and Goku gets to compliment them on their sick muscles, and they get to hang out with Android 21, and Android 21 flirts with them, and they get all that stuff. Like it's fun wish fulfillment stuff.
Yeah.
In fan fiction form.
Yeah, but then as soon as it I don't think we should necessarily hold like different forms of media to like different standards, because I still think fan fiction is valid and I think it's like a good way for people to explore their things, but if you're like publishing a story and like asking for money for it, like fix up that self-insert character, make them a real character, please.
Yeah, I was touching on that earlier on how on a smaller scale, like if you're just kind of sharing it with friends and whatever, or like people within a respective fandom, then yeah, I don't see what's wrong with writing a perfect version of yourself. But at the same time, like when suddenly that becomes a lot bigger, or when your story is actually starting to gain more traction and more eyes, it's super imperative, I personally agree, to make that character a character and not just a perfect version of you, because then
Yeah.
ultimately you might just get a Mary Sue, or at the very least like a very boring protagonist.
Like, I definitely don't I do. I'm not gonna diss fanfic, but like I know my brain I thinks of like if I read Shadow over Arendelle and Elsa is a Mary Sue in that
Man,
I will have less like of a guttural response to that than if like I paid I don't know 17 if I paid $17 for like a book and I got it and the book is Shadow over Arendelle, then I might be like a little bit like, come on, man.
Okay, I want to entertain that side tangent for just a second. I've been trying to look.
Is there a new chapter?
Yeah, I've been trying to look for a new chapter recently, and there still isn't anything, and I'm sad.
God.
There hasn't been any updates. Like the first chapter was uploaded in like July, and it has not updated since.
Bruh,
Ugh, heartbreaking.
come on. I want to see I want to see Shadow and Elsa's relationship like develop. And for those
Berserk has had 2 chapters since Shadow over Arendelle started.
for those who aren't familiar with what Shadow over Arendelle is,
Which
you're not
no
gonna
one's
find-
going to be.
Yeah, you're not gonna find out because we have to move on now. So I had listed briefly earlier some of the tropes associated with a Mary Sue, and I guess like let's each go around listing maybe one of them that we kind of know of and talk about them in length. So for me, the one trope that I can most commonly associate a Mary Sue trope or the Mary Sue trope to is the zero flaws thing, and obviously there's a lot of tropes out there, and I'll get your guys' input on it in a second. But yeah, I think having an absolutely flawless character has almost always bugged me. And granted, this is someone who has written pretty perfect characters before, but there's always been to some degree a flaw to them. And it's not just like a very minute flaw either. Like it's not like a physical scar that makes them, I guess, like physically flawed, but even then it's just like something to their appearance, right? Like Mary Sues typically are absolutely completely flawless. Like they don't at any point experience any kind of anxiety because they're almost always confident. They don't experience any kind of hardship because they were either kind of dropped off in the middle of nowhere, or they they had, I don't want to say their parents killed off, but like their whole origin story is kind of a mystery from the beginning anyway, so it can't explain, or there's no interesting backstory or relatable backstory to tap into for some kind of hardship. I guess furthermore, I guess in general, actually, there's just no interest. Like or at least I have come to appreciate a lot of flaws in characters. Like, if nothing else, they'd be a very helpful story device because it shows, it's something that you could tap into, like I said, for a dramatic moment or maybe like a key character development for a book or a series or whatever. But when you don't have that, like when you don't have a character flaw to show off or to like show, then that ultimately doesn't engage a reader, because we all in our own ways have things that don't make us perfect people. And I've always said that, perfect people shouldn't exist, really, because
Perfect people can't exist. It's impossible.
exactly, and they shouldn't. But there's a lot of things that we sympathize over and we bond over, such as anxieties, worries, sometimes similar mental health conditions that we confide in that, and projecting, or I don't want to say projecting, but like sympathizing that with a character that you can relate to on that. If handled well, like you're going to have a lot of people adoring your character, because then it's, it shows the hardship that they've gone through and it shows just how much they're overcoming. And that is an inspiring story, obviously. But when you have no flaws, then who exactly is that character for? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you
Yeah,
guys think on
actually-
characters having zero, or what do you think on the Mary Sue trope having zero flaws?
Well, first, any young writers listening, pro tip: sexy flaws do not count as flaws.
Seconded.
You cannot make your character be like, oh, I'm edgy and I have a problem with authority. That's not a character flaw.
Mm-hmm. You can't give them scars on their face, or like, you know, yeah, you can't give them scars or blemishes on their face, or like cool tattoos,
Or
and
like,
call that a physical, physical flaw.
or like, ooh, he has an attitude. That's a flaw. It's
Yeah,
a trait.
like, I think if you're not gonna give a backstory behind that kind of brashness anyway, then like, don't include it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alex,
Yeah.
how about you? What do you think on?
Also, I was gonna say, when you were talking about that, I think that having like a flawless protagonist from a storytelling point is also super disadvantageous. Is that a word?
Is that a word?
I don't know.
This.
All right, here on the InkGuild
Yeah.
Podcast, we just make up a bunch of words that you guys can use whenever you want.
I'm
We're English
really
majors.
tired.
What's a dictionary?
Okay. Anyway, but it really holds back writing. I mean, how many times have you guys read something or watched something and seen a character do something really stupid or misunderstand something and like yelled at them for it? When your character is supposed to be flawless and they make those kinds of mistakes, it's like 10 times more frustrating. Like if you're like, oh, my character's really smart, and super empathetic and always like understands people and is really insightful, and then someone like lies to them and tricks them into doing something, that's super frustrating. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have a character that has a defining like character flaw of trusting too easily or something, and they get lied to, that's using their flaw in the story to like propel the story forward.
Mhm.
But when your
Mhm.
character is supposed to be really good at reading people and like really insightful, and someone lies to them and they just believe it without questioning it, it makes them look really stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
That-
makes that whole scene seem very forced.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it feels like you're forcing stuff for
Like
plot
if a character fucks up by virtue of their established flaws, and it's like it adds to the intensity. Because I'm like, oh man, that's something that I can realistically expect the character to do, and now I'm worried for them. But if it just comes out of nowhere that this character suddenly does some smooth brain shit when they've never done that before, it's very irritating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think especially if it isn't explained either.
yeah.
If it's all kind of left to our imagination, then it's kind of boring in that regard. Or it's boring to say the least, and it's just downright inexcusable, really.
I think the biggest excuse of that is the Daenerys kind of forgot meme.
Yeah. All right. Alex, how about you? Is there a particular Mary Sue attribute that you want to touch on, or?
Characters around them always praise them for everything. And like, yeah, it's just like the character is constantly surrounded by these people who are like, oh wow, you're so amazing, you can do no wrong. And like the Mary Sue can do no wrong apparently, and that just leaves like a whole bunch of characters to do that have nothing to do in the story except praise Mary Sue, which is also really frustrating because ensemble casts are fun, and you cannot carry a whole story, especially depending on what it is. But if you're talking like a movie, if you're talking like a novel, if you're talking like a TV show, you cannot carry a whole story on one single person.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. And so having just all the side characters be there to do nothing but praise the Mary Sue is also really irritating.
It's pretty cringe, man.
Hmm?
It's pretty cringe.
Yeah.
I don't want to like jump the gun on the elephant in the room, but that was a big problem with me with the most recent Star Wars movie. I don't want to get into the Force Awakens just yet. I'm assuming we're saving that for like a later time.
Oh yeah.
But it was definitely an issue for me because you had this established ensemble cast of side characters. You had Finn and Poe and Rose and like all like the classic characters and stuff. And then like they still more or less had stuff to do in the other movies, but it really felt like in the most recent movie they had literally nothing to do. Like I don't even remember if Rose was in the movie. Finn felt like almost comedically like side trailed. I don't think Poe had anything to do in the movie. It didn't feel like any of the characters had anything to do in the movie. They were just sort of there to exist in a story that wasn't theirs anymore.
Yeah. Suddenly it was all about Rey.
And Kylo Ren.
Yeah. And you're right.
Yeah.
Like we'll really get more in depth into that in a minute, but Gabe, how about you? Is there
Actually, on that note, I know I bring this up literally every single episode, but that was one of my problems in Throne of Glass.
Throne of Glass?
Sarah J. Maas button.
If nothing else, if she actually is listening to these, or if she eventually does end up listening to these, she must be so annoyed that we're still talking about her book.
She's probably my biggest fan right now. Shit.
Okay, Alex, what is
my problem with it? Aelin was always like, she was the most infamous assassin in the land at the age of 16, and then she was like, and then you find out she's got all these special snowflake superpowers, and she does all this really cool stuff, and we don't even get to see half of the cool stuff she does, and everyone's always just like, wow, Aelin, you're amazing. Like,
yeah.
And like all the other like how many characters have died for her at this point, and how many characters are indebted to her in some way?
So wait, like in the first book they introduce her and she's already like an established celebrity assassin in this universe?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. She was the most like well-known assassin in the country at the age of 16. And like listen, I'm not like, you know, some teenage girls are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But like you're telling me
you're...
there's no other assassins in a country that apparently has a lot of assassins. There's like an assassin school in like the next country over.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that she's the most well-known famous assassin in the whole country at the age of 16.
Well, and like what's fucked up about that is that I'm not immediately turned off by the idea of a 16-year-old being like the top assassin in this universe.
Yeah,
but like to me
then she's also secretly a princess and secretly a fairy with the most magic of all of the fairies.
Yeah,
and like it keeps building.
Yeah, like, well, go ahead, Gabe.
What I was gonna say was like, if you have that premise, I feel like you sort of struck narrative gold with that. Like, because if you wrote the story from like a different way of looking at it, if you said, all right, so I'm gonna tell the story about a teenager who is in the act of becoming the #1 ranked assassin, that's already, just saying that sounds far more compelling than this teenager who already at the start of the story is the #1 assassin in the world.
Yeah, see, the thing is then, because the prequel novella collection, The Assassin's Blade, the thing is with that book,
did I just fuck my own point with a book that already exists?
See, but the thing is, in that book, she is still an established nation famous assassin. There's no really, like, it still shows her fucking up, but at that point she's still absolutely like renowned as, you know, Adderland's assassin. At that point, there's no training sequences, there's no like, you know, how did there's
no competition with other people who might think that a 16-year-old is not fit to be the #1 assassin, or not fit to be, you know, an assassin in general as a child.
Yeah, they're basically like, a lot of them are just content with it at this point.
that's not like the idea of a child getting involved in like a global assassin competition to be the world's greatest assassin. In my head, that sounds a lot more compelling than a teenager is at the beginning of the story already a well-respected member of the assassin community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that basically just the plot of Hunter x Hunter?
In Hunter x Hunter, his dad is the number one.
Yeah, but then
Not the
and
number
then
one.
he's like well-known hunter, and then Gon is trying to become a hunter like him.
Oh, you mean like yeah, exactly, yeah. Like Hunter x Hunter is basically like Gon's rise as like a small little child to the top rank of this dangerous group of mercenaries, and it's
Yeah, so what you're saying that a better version of Throne of Glass would be is Hunter x Hunter.
well, not
That's it.
I wasn't thinking Hunter x Hunter. In my head actually the comparison I was going to make was My Hero. Like, could you imagine how much less compelling My Hero Academia would be if the plot was that at the beginning of the story Deku was like already the number one hero?
Oh yeah, that would take this like we
It
can
would take
get
it would take you right out.
yeah, it'd take the momentum out of the race already, I guess.
Like,
But-
That's why
Yeah.
my solution to Throne of Glass is make Aelin not the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We should make that a campaign.